Hi, everybody. So we are here. This is very exciting. We're here to talk about the latest Star Trek movie. We're here to talk about Star Trek Beyond, and my friend Tom is here with me. You want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yeah. And so I think I can solidly say I am also a Star Trek fan.
Yay! Welcome.
Yay! Yeah. And we have now. This is our ninth video that we've done. I'll put a playlist in the description. I do have the Q&A open. If anybody feels like asking us a question, feel free. And so this should be a lot of fun. This, of course, Star Trek Beyond is the third in the rebooted series. The first two were directed by J.J. Abrams, and now this one directed by Justin Lin. And it opened pretty strong. It was the lowest of the three, but it's still, for this summer at least, it did pretty well. It had oh gosh, where is it? 60 something, I think is what it was. It has a total 5-day total of $72 million, according to Box Office Mojo, whereas Into Darkness had 91. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And so we will talk about it. Yeah, it's a slow year, unless you're an animated film. Pretty much. Okay, so I did my little summary as best I could. I have seen it twice, and it's obviously harder when you don't have the DVD with you to write the summary, but I did what I could. And this is spoiler filled.
Oh boy.
Podcast.
I'm so relieved.
So yes. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't watch this, and then see the movie and then come back and watch it. So okay. So Star Trek Beyond starts in year 3 of the 5-year exploration mission on the USS Enterprise. Captain Kirk is feeling restless, and when they reach Starbase Yorktown, he puts in a request for a landed position of Vice Admiral. Spock and Uhura have separated, and Spock receives news of Ambassador Spock's passing. In the middle of their shore leave, the crew is called together to help a person named Kalara, whose ship is stranded on Altamid in the nebula. Hold on just a sec. Okay, sorry. Okay, the nebula. However, when they arrive, it turns out that there is a swarm of little ships that attack the Enterprise under a leader named Krall. The Enterprise crash lands, and the crew end up in separate groups in various pods. Sulu, Uhura, and others are taken prisoner by Krall. It turns out he is a dissident former captain who feels the Federation's peaceful ways are weak. He drains people's energy to allow him to live as Krall. Meanwhile, Kirk and Chekhov discover Kalara is a traitor when she tries to retrieve an artifact Krall needs. Bones and Spock are separated as well, and Spock becomes Spock becomes injured in their landing. Scotty is on his own until he meets a woman named Jayla, who has escaped from Krall and is hiding in an old ship called the USS Franklin. Scotty, Jayla, Kirk, Chekhov, Bones, and Spock all work to save Sulu, Uhura, and the crew. Then they are able to make the USS Franklin fly, following Krall as he attempts to attack Yorktown. They use a music frequency to break up and destroy the swarm, and then Kirk faces off against Krall in Yorktown. The film ends with Kirk and crew celebrating his birthday and declaring his decision to stay on the ship and refuse the Vice Admiral position. So, there you go. So, I kept getting interrupted by something. But what do you think? Did I catch most everything in your memory?
Yeah, I think so. Though it, those who've seen the movie know, or if you've seen the movie, you know that the reveal of him being a former Starfleet captain comes way at the end.
Yeah.
So up until then, we think we're looking at an alien, right?
Right.
I watched a video that I like their description. That he looks like a cross between a frog and a tire tread.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And the way he prolongs his life is by kind of sucking off the life of others. right? Some of the people he's captured. I don't know if you covered that.
Yeah, I said he drains people's energy to allow him to live. That's Crawl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so what was your overall thoughts of the movie? What do you think?
I thought it was optimistic and fun. I think my first impression was a little bit tinted. That is, I maybe didn't enjoy it as much as I could have. It was my first late night showing in a long time. I went on Thursday night, the Friday, before it opened officially, and it's been a while since I did that. It's not really my cup of tea to go to movies late at night, so that I was tired. I came to it tired and had a hard time following some of the action and the dialogue, especially in the first half hour or so.
Okay.
Very quickly, but. A few things that blew me away. I loved the space station Yorktown.
Yeah, that was so cool.
I felt for the first time in a long time a sense of wonder at the movies,
Mm-hmm.
And it's always good to feel that while watching Star Trek, because that's an essential part of my response, and part of what has made me a fan is that sense of wonder. And it does in a very efficient job of establishing. This is Star Trek's future. This is the future Star Trek is describing, right? And it's a very unfashionable vision of the future at the moment, where our science fiction is kind of dominated by zombies and dystopia and.
It's true. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
Beautiful teenagers saving the world from the evil oppressors. Be it in Hunger Games or Star Wars.
Right.
That's kind of more the fashion in movies. With science fiction, and Star Trek is distinctly unfashionable in this sense. It's very optimistic and upbeat and positive about the future, and that the whole space station embodies that sense of optimism about the human race that you find in Star Trek. And so I felt like that feeling carried over through the rest of the picture, and I was pretty satisfied with that.
Mm-hmm.
But one feeling I walked away from that I did not expect was a weariness with Star Trek movies. I want Star Trek on TV again.
Have I worn you down? This is not good.
I still like Star Trek movies. I still like watching them ad nauseum. And I plan to see this one next week.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. I like these movies.
Yeah.
But I miss Star Trek on TV.
Yeah.
And I'm really gratified that it's coming. We have a title, Star Trek Discovery. We even have a ship to look forward to, which incidentally is based on a discarded concept for the Enterprise for the motion picture. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I felt kind of weary of this being the only place Star Trek is happening. And I'm glad that we're moving on. I'm glad that we're moving on to another step where, yes, that's going to be there, and I love that there's going to be a fourth picture with this cast. But I'm also very grateful that Star Trek's coming back to TV, because that's really where it belongs.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was so entertained by it. I had so much fun. I almost hate using that word because I feel like it doesn't mean a whole lot, but I just walked out of it being like, I don't know how you're not marginally entertained by this film. Like, I was I had a smile on my face. I thought it was so enjoyable. And I really liked that it felt like these guys were friends.
Yes.
In more that maybe not as much as like the sixth one.
Yeah.
But it had that kind of feel to me of like, these people are friends.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. I love movies about friends, and I think maybe that's why I responded to it so much. Is that it had that element to it as opposed to the sci-fi, and because I admit on the second watch I was like, oh yeah, I can see why some people didn't really like it that much because the story's pretty silly, but it's just, to me, it was just entertaining. I don't know, it worked for me.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I like, you make a good point. It really did feel like the cast felt finally really at home. I like that, the ensemble feeling kind of set in, and also we finally dispensed with the origins You know,
Yeah.
the origins are over with. Okay, we got Kirk and Spock on the Enterprise and the whole crew on the Enterprise in the first one. We got Kirk and Spock working together as a team and figuring out what they believe in and why they're there. And in this one, we finally see them like cohesive, and it's like an episode of the new series almost. Like it
Yeah.
has that kind of feeling about it.
Yeah, I think so. We'll talk a little bit more of that, but it did feel sort of like a high-powered adrenaline episode of the show.
Oh yeah. Oh sure.
Because it was a little bit. We'll talk about being episodic, but it did have that kind of feel to it. But I didn't mind that. I just thought it was. I don't know. I guess for me, because a lot of people complained about Force Awakens being like, "Oh, it didn't do anything new," which I disagree with. But I don't know. I guess for a certain kind of movie, I just want an adventure. I want something I like. I want to like the characters. I want it to feel. I want it to feel enjoyable, and I don't really care that as much about the story, I guess. Or like, I don't particularly care about the characters being super complex. I mean, how complex really is like Indiana Jones, you know, or Jason Bourne, or you know, some of these characters, or James Bond, or whatever. Like, I don't really need them to be.
Yeah, different genres bring different expectations, right?
Yeah, I just want an adventure, and I want people that I like.
Right. Yeah. It's you know, I like, you're reminding me, speaking of Indiana Jones, to help sort of further make your point. Kate Blanchett was interviewed about when she was filming Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They asked her, okay, so tell us about the movie you're making now. She says, yes, it's called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and it's about lesbian lovers who are empty nesters in New York. Right, and she goes on about like with this like Sundance, you know, kind of plot synopsis for a movie called Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, right? So, really good joke and effective because it's different genres have different expectations.
Yeah, and I guess I have, after watching all of these movies, I can accept different things in Star Trek. Like, I don't think it has to all be like Wrath of Khan or like, you know, kind of things. I mean, I thought this was way stronger than Into Darkness personally, even though I don't dislike Into Darkness, but I just thought that one, I don't know, I just didn't feel like that one was very memorable. And this one, I thought, I don't know, maybe we'll say this, but I thought that the characters weren't as memorable in Into Darkness, whereas I feel like the characters I liked a lot more in this, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I felt like the atmosphere of Into Darkness was a little more oppressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had a stronger sense of like Batman and Gotham, or like where they have to do the right thing in spite of their surroundings.
Yeah, and I think maybe partly the characters aren't that memorable because we've already seen, since we've already seen Khan be really memorable. Even though it's Benedict Cumberbatch and he does a good job, it's just not as memorable as the original Khan, or quite as memorable. And so, whereas at least this, I don't know.
This one's cutting its own path. I really got a strong sense of that this cast was not comparing itself anymore to what the old cast had done before. Like that, there are things that remind you of the original series a lot, actually, and of the other movies, but
not in the same way as the other two, though, I think.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't so leaning on the old cast and our memory of the old cast as a crutch.
Yeah, I agree. So, well, let's talk about the connection to the TV series, since you just brought that up. What are some things that you saw that were sort of connections to any of the TV shows or series?
Oh, so many. But the big ones, the big ones that came out were at the beginning. I loved it. The way Kirk is not sure he wants to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. Because in the original pilot of the series, when we meet Captain Pike, that's exactly.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about that alternate pilot.
Right. Yeah. So in that original pilot, so by the way, if you want to watch it, it's on Netflix. That original pilot, The Cage, it's on Netflix, but you have to go to the end of the episode list to find it.
Oh, okay, that's
They're
good
put
to know.
on there in order of air date, and the Cage wasn't aired until actually aired on television until the 80s.
Oh, okay.
So it's the last one in season 1. Possibly season 3. I can't remember actually. Now I'm questioning myself, but I think it's at the very end of the season 1 episode list, and it's like episode 0, right?
Okay.
Yeah, check that out. But anyway, when we meet Captain Pike in that pilot, he's not sure he wants to do this anymore. Like, I could almost quote it for you. He sits down with his doctor, who starts serving him drinks, right? And the doctor is kind of his confidant, in a similar way, where he starts talking about, I'm tired of deciding who goes on the landing party and who doesn't, and who lives and who dies. Or they've just come away from a brutal mission that was very tough, kind of thing. And he's not sure he wants to do this anymore. So that's when we meet him. That's the position that he's in. That's how he's feeling. And they almost reenact that scene for us in this movie, with McCoy serving the drinks and listening to Kirk's doubts and trying to help talk him through the funk that he's in. So that was great. I loved the reference to the big green hand in space, because that was sort of a throwaway joke on Scotty's part. But there's an episode where they actually do get grabbed by a big green hand in space, and it's a little hokey. But yeah, anyway.
Is there anything like a character that sucks life like the way that he does?
Oh, that's a good question. No, but I will say that a major theme of the original series is a warning against what they often refer to as life prolongation. Right? They often meet the crazy guy who wants to live forever and who's come up with some scheme or other to do that thing. And it's always an allegory about how that's a bad idea. So that's a theme of the original series. Another theme that comes up is struggle, and something that you find in the original series a lot is Kirk often gives a speech at the end towards the end of the episode. Right, there's often a monologue where Kirk explains the moral of the story for us, and often in those speeches, he's advocating for we have to struggle in order to really be who we are. Right, that struggle is a part of us. That if we never have to try or work hard for anything, nothing matters. And what's interesting in this is that they sort of turn that around and give those lines to the bad guy and sort of show the dark side of that, the dark side of that philosophy.
Interesting.
So I thought that was kind of cool. Let's see. And then references to other series. There's a lot of Enterprise references here.
Okay.
Which was that was the last time. That was the latest series that's been on television.
Oh, okay.
And it's a prequel series. It takes place about 100 years before Kirk and company.
Oh, interesting.
And their Enterprise looks a lot like the Franklin, and the uniforms also are very similar. So that's cool. And also the Makos. The Makos are in that. The soldiers that Kroll was a part of.
Oh.
Before the Federation was founded. Right, and so Enterprise actually takes place before the Federation is founded. Starfleet exists, but the Federation does not. So Starfleet is representing just Earth. Right, so he announces, instead of, I'm Captain Jonathan Archer of the Federation Starship Enterprise, he says, I'm Captain Jonathan Archer of the United Earth Ship Enterprise. Or of the Earth Ship Enterprise.
That show's still on, or is it over now?
Oh, long gone. Yeah, it lasted about 4 seasons. It ran from about 2001 to 2004, 2005. And it's all over Netflix. You can catch it on there. And it's got Scott Bakula as the captain. It's a good show.
Okay.
It's not a fan favorite, I would say, but it is good. It's solid. I think it's a good addition to the mythos. But this movie draws a lot from that stuff.
Yeah, I like that. I thought that was interesting, sort of the pre-Federation idea of yeah. Well, I mean, we'll talk a little more about that, but I thought that was interesting to kind of get a new. Um, you sort of maybe take it for granted a little bit that the Federation's always been there almost. So it's sort of interesting to get that prologue, I guess.
Uh-huh.
That was cool. Okay, so we have a new director. And so Justin Lin, who did 4 of the Fast and the Furious movies. And so what do you think he brought to the table, and did you like him as a Star Trek director?
I couldn't speak to his specific skills. I've never seen any of those movies. I know that the fans kind of let out a collective groan when they found out that he had directed the Fast and the Furious movies, because I think there's a, like I said before, I think there's been a worry among fans that the jocks have taken over Star Trek, and the jocks are using it to make fun of us.
Okay.
Right, and so I think this was with that template in mind, people looked at that hire and went, "Oh, great, another jock making fun of us." And I think it's clear that's not the case at all. This is not a parody. This is not. There's nothing condescending or sneering about this picture. And I think, look, I think he did a perfectly competent job. And when you were directing a Star Trek movie, you don't have to be Stanley Kubrick, okay? You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be able to keep the action moving and make sure the characters are who they're supposed to be, right?
Because one of the things about the Fast and Furious movies is they are completely ridiculous. Like, throw your common sense out the window. But they're very energetic, and they are at the core about these friendships these guys have, or some girls, but mostly guys. And so I think that he kind of did that here. I really felt like, yeah, the action is pretty over the top, pretty silly. It's not as silly as Fast and Furious, although there are definitely moments where you can see the influence, like the scene with the motorcycle.
Right.
That is very similar to a scene in Furious 6, in the 6th Fast and Furious movie, where there's Dominic, that he's on, the Vin Diesel character is on a motorcycle, and he has to reach out, so it's a very similar scene. But I thought that it to me it was energetic, and I hate to use the word, but fun.
Yeah.
And I liked the friendships so I think you could see that that's what's important to this director.
Yeah, and I think I think what I appreciated more was Simon Pegg's contributions as a fan. And a knowledgeable fan.
Right.
That was all very gratifying.
I agree. So it starts out with Kirk saying that his life has become episodic, and some claim the movie feels episodic as a downside. Do you agree? And did the movie do that storyline of Kirk's boredom justice? Did you feel like that was satisfactorily resolved and dealt with and everything?
Okay. I'll address the first thing. Does it feel episodic? Well, here's the thing about Star Trek movies: they can't win. All right, either they're too over the top and it's not true to Star Trek, right, or it's too much like it's just an extended episode of the series. Snooze. Yeah. Okay, so which is it? When they try to do one, they end up being criticized for not doing the other, right? So. Yeah.
Sometimes within the same review, I've heard it, that it's very episodic, and it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't feel like it really was that episodic. I mean, I can see their point, I guess, but I feel like all movies at a certain point are sort of episodic. They all have an Act 1, and an Act 2, and an Act 3. They all have, like...
Well, I will say it is episodic in the sense that we know none of the handful of people are going to die, or if they will, they'll get better.
That's true.
we know that yes, the Enterprise gets destroyed, but we know it's coming back. We know they're not going to be without an Enterprise.
That's true.
Though I must say, that was one of the most. That's the most that we've seen the Enterprise die 2 other times on screen. That was the most agonizing by far. That
It was the longest. I mean, it takes
passion of the Enterprise. Like it was it. That poor ship is tortured. Yeah, it takes forever, and it's dismembered. Then the cells are knocked off of it. Oh, I hate the sight of that.
I was going to ask you, does it kind of point out a flaw in the design of the Enterprise that it can be kind of severed like that? Shouldn't it be sort of compacted? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Sure. Well, although it wouldn't be the art object that it is if it was designed another way. And that's my in the real world explanation or rationalization for it. But the in-universe, right? Warp drive is not. Warp drive is as much an art as it is a science. Where like what you're warping is space itself, right? So you're contracting the space in front of you and expanding the space behind you. And I love how they depicted that, by the way, in this movie. That graphic of the Enterprise moving through literally warping space as it moves. That was beautiful. That was one of those.
That's true. I forgot about that.
I've ever seen in a Star Trek movie. That was gorgeous. But the geometry of the ship matters. Like the path that it cuts in changing the shape of space itself depends a great deal on the shape that it is, right? So that's what the nacelles do, is help provide that geometry, right? But enough geek talk. But but I personally I just think, well, look, it's beautiful that way. It's just a gorgeous ship, and also it's iconic. I mean, nothing else looks quite like it. So
I just had never occurred to me until I saw them clip, and I'm like, maybe that's not the best way to design a ship.
Well, there's certainly
to have it all.
Actually, it's kind of surprising we haven't seen it dismantled in that way before till now.
Yeah, it kind of is. That's true. And I think they could have spent a little bit more time on Kirk. It does feel a little bit like it's sort of the sort of button ends of the movie. Like you get a little bit of the beginning, you get a little bit of at the end, and I think could have been spent a little more time on him and his trying to decide what to do.
Though I did like the way Chris Pine was directed and the choices he made in playing the character, because the little punk, driving his stepdad's car off a cliff is gone.
That's
right?
True.
The little punk hitting on everything in a skirt is gone. He's not a little punk anymore. He really came across as a mature starship captain whom people respected and who had to set an example at all times. You got a strong sense of that. And Into Darkness a little, but not so much. Like, I think one of the cheap shots that the Honest Trailers made at Into Darkness was that Captain Kirk was played by Zap Brannigan. If you've ever seen Futurama, he's kind of a parody of Captain Kirk, where he's always Mr. Sexy, Captain Sexy, and there are moments in Into Darkness where it's like, oh, give it a rest. Right, but in this one, no, he came across as the Kirk we know from the series.
Yeah.
And that was really good and strong, and but yeah, his arc was not. I'm not sure. Just hearing his favorite Beastie Boys song again was all he needed. As good as that is.
Well, yeah, I mean Beastie Boys, right? Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it, but it could have been better. So that's what I'll say.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So Sulu is introduced as a gay character with a husband and a daughter. What did you think of that and how it was handled?
Okay, so I actually changed my mind about this.
Okay.
Going into this, my feeling was, and I tended, and I still kind of tend to agree with George Takei on this, that George Takei objected because the guy who originally played Sulu has objected to this because he didn't play a gay character, and Gene Roddenberry didn't write a gay character.
Right.
And I think there's nothing wrong with gay people playing straight people, okay? And vice versa. Like,
right.
it's acting people. Um, and so there's a little bit of like, I came into it with a sense of, expecting like, oh, here we go. It's the token, make the social justice warriors happy thing that we need to put into every movie now, apparently. Right, so I'm a little bit weary of that kind of stuff. That being said, the way it was presented was a little bit ambiguous, right? There's this other guy there, but we don't really know the nature of their relationship explicitly. Though it's, I don't know, I guess it's pretty strong. But anyway, what that's a part of, the context of that scene is showing us the space station Yorktown, and as a shorthand for this is what the future is. Right. So if this is what the future is, means yes, and there's even gay people there too.
Right.
If that's what we need to say about a bright, shiny future where everything's great and everybody's getting along and there's no poverty and no war and no prejudice anymore. If that's the fastest way you can say that in a movie in 2016, by all means.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of it from exactly that perspective, but you're right. It does kind of say kind of what Yorktown is at that stage where they're at. And to me, it makes sense because this is in the future and we have, many functioning gay, couples now. So it makes sense in the future that they're going to be there. But it had such a small thing. I mean, it was so minor.
Yeah, it's very little. Yeah.
That I can't imagine anybody being too PO'd about it.
Yeah, I was prepared. Yeah, I was prepared to scoff at something that served no purpose other than to satisfy a tiny sliver of the audience.
Right.
And it served a purpose for the whole audience and for the whole story.
For the story. Yeah, I mean, I'm not personally a fan of taking I would rather have like actual original characters. If they're going to make a gay character, have it be an original character. Like, I'm not a fan of making Captain America gay or making I don't think that does, we don't want to get too into it, but I don't think that does anybody any favors, Right. Like, they deserve their own characters, not adapted, characters. Right. And so I was going to it the same way, feeling like, oh dear, this is just kind of like those. But I did think they handled it really well. It wasn't preachy. It wasn't too much. It was just sort of, here it is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's a shorthand. They're trying to very quickly tell you what the Star Trek future is all about because people don't know.
Right.
It's not a given. And especially given the previous movies, that kind of got, that idea of the future being beautiful kind of got lost.
Yeah. Well, that's true because there's that planet where they're really backward at the very beginning. So they're not all sort of forward at the beginning of Into Darkness. That planet that's very, very backward, and they see them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. It's an alien planet, but no, I'm talking about like Earth, Starfleet. I mean, yes. In Into Darkness, we get and in 2009, we get a sense that Earth is future-y, right? But that doesn't tell us much.
That's true. That's a good point.
In this one, there's a loud and clear message. The future is beautiful. The technology is fantastic, yes, but more than that, people get along, and no one's suffering. Like that human suffering is a historical artifact. It's not a part of everyday life.
Yeah, which does come up later because it's part of Krall's reason for detesting the Federation because it makes them weak.
Yeah, that's right.
You have a bunch of pansies in his mind.
You have to establish that, and you have to do it in a hurry because it's a movie.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so Ambassador Spock has died, or Spock Prime as they called him in the last one, and Uhura and Spock have broken up. Do you buy Spock's reason for the breakup and his emotions over Spock's passing?
Yeah, I do. It is the kind of thing Spock would do.
Yeah.
Right. He's very all about like, this is my code. Excuse me. Logic is my code, and logic says XYZ. but he's still kind of becoming the Spock we knew in Star Trek Six, who knows that logic is the beginning of wisdom, not the end. He's still a little bit locked into being more Vulcan than Vulcan, and he feels like what he's got to do is the logical thing is to break up with Uhura and make little Vulcans.
Right.
Yeah. So it's pure logic on his part. I buy it. Spock at that age, at that stage of his development, would have made that decision and rang true to me.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just, in the first movie I said I thought that Zachary Quinto was flat, emotionally flat. And I feel like he has really grown into the role very much. He doesn't feel flat to me anymore. I really thought there was some nice emotion when he was looking at Spock Prime stuff and looking at the picture of the old. I loved that moment. That was great. He's looking at the picture of the old cast.
Even though it was
really
a production
cool
photo of Star Trek V.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking at it going, wait, so what's that from? And I worked it out. It's Star Trek V.
That's funny.
Because in Star Trek 6, Sulu was a captain. They look too old to be in Star Trek 3, and it's not 4, right? Because they're on the Enterprise. So, yeah, it's Star Trek 5.
I mean, do you think that was about as good a way they could have handled Leonard Nimoy's passing as they did? Or
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so what did you think of this idea and the visuals of the swarm? Did you, I mean, it's a pretty long action scene with the swarm coming and, it piercing and he's like taking off parts of the ship and all of that. What did you think of the swarm?
I'll get back to you on that next week because I kind of feel like I need to watch that again and take it in because it all went by so fast. It was kind of a blur, actually.
Yeah.
One thing it did kind of harken back to was the idea of the Borg, a collective consciousness, which appears in Star Trek: The Next Generation, and we'll see in the movies.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
But the Borg are sort of lumbering zombies, right? Who beam onto your ship and start taking it apart and changing it.
Okay.
This was very much in the spirit of the new movies. They're fast, they're terrifying, they're invasive and in your face. And I felt like it sort of reminded, it was sort of had the smacked of the Borg, but it wasn't like, this is the new Borg. They didn't do that either. So, no, I think it was a good way to go. It was definitely a way to a movie like this needs to have lots of CG somethings on the screen. And so it might as well be bad guys piercing the ship.
This movie really reminded me a lot of a Marvel movie. I thought that it had the witty dialogue, it had the action, the somewhat bland villain, which Marvel movies have, and it had there's been so many Marvel movies with the villain and his swarm, basically, for lack of a better word.
Right,
whether it's the Avengers Age of Ultron, Thor, all these movies, like, you kind of got...
There's got to be a swarm, yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be a swarm. But I thought that it was still handled in a fun way. I love Marvel movies. That's a compliment for me. Yeah. So,
well, it's no criticism. I mean, they're going to cash in the tropes of our time, right? The older films cashed in the tropes of their time. Why can't this one do the same? So
that's a good point. Okay. Let's see. So they end up breaking up they crash land in their different pods and stuff, and it breaks up. And this is one of the brilliant things I thought the movie did, is because you really got to spend time with characters because they were broken up. Like, some people miss that team dynamic. I actually liked that because it allowed characters like a Chekhov or, a Bones or, these things to really have just me time, or me and another person time. And so I think that's why I felt like there was such a theme of friendship and a feel of friendship within the story because of all these couplings.
And the pairings were a little off, like or odd. As they would be in that situation, right?
So
there are characters who sort of have naturally been paired.
Yeah.
In the movies and the TV shows, and they broke those up completely, and that was nice.
Yeah. So I thought we'd kind of go over each of the pairings real quick.
Okay.
So the first one I wanted to talk about is Spock and Bones. And of course, Spock is injured. Bones is taking care of him. And hilarious. So good. Great. What do you think of that?
That was a ton of fun. Yeah. I like that we got a chance to see them cement their friendship. So now, like, I guess if you want to say that, I guess we could say that there was a little bit of origin work done in this, but only kind of like it. You know, Spock and Bones we've seen them lock horns before, right? So it's not exactly new. But I do like that they really did grow together as friends, and so now the trio is complete, right? So now the three of them can be friends together in a kind of more or less equal way.
Yeah, when they get him on the when they get Bones to go on the ship, the alien ship, the swarm ship, that was hilarious. I laughed my head off. He was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah,
Are you crazy?
I love that they've got a guy who's not so thrilled to be there and is always pointing out like how rotten or how scary it's going to be. Actually, you know what it reminded me of? I said that they broke up the pairings a little bit. There was that time when in Star Trek VI where Bones and Spock go down below decks to the torpedo room to modify the torpedo to find the Klingon ship. And it did kind of smack of that just a little. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, or even Star Trek IV, there's kind of pairing off a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is Scotty and Jayla. So we get the introduction of Jayla, and I loved her. I thought she was great, and she was tough, you know, and she could be very tough, and she was clever and smart, but she was also weak in certain ways, which I thought she was a great character. I mean, she's very fearful, she's very worried, you know, and honest. All of those things, I just thought that she was such a well-written character. And as far as Scotty, I thought that Simon Pegg did himself a lot of favors. He wrote a pretty good part for himself, I think.
Yeah, he did. But I like that. I don't think he got carried away, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I felt like, too, he got beyond the jokes a little bit. Where Scotty in the previous two is great because he's always there for a laugh. But in this one, there's a little bit less of that. There's a little more. Simon Pegg gave himself a little more to do, a little better work to do, I think.
That's true. I mean, because he's very sympathetic with Jayla.
Yeah, he is, and their connection is not just, they're not Laurel and Hardy. They're not a comedy duo necessarily, right? They're there to do some serious work some heavy lifting in the story. And about Jayla, you make some good points about her. She has she is very tough and determined, but she is also vulnerable and has been a victim.
That's a good word.
Of a terrible thing that's happened to her. I think they walked a nice line here that J.J. Abrams did in a similar way with Rey in Force Awakens, where she's capable and she's the one you're rooting for her, but at the same time, she appeals to your sense of wanting to protect the little sister, you know. That worked for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you did feel that sense of sort of protection, but also that sense of independence. That's a good point. And because I personally will defend Rey till I'm blue in the face. I think she was a great character. I loved her. But
she's my favorite Star Wars character, hands down.
Really?
Well, okay.
Yay!
Just below Darth Vader, but she's up there.
Yeah, she was great, and she maybe had Mary Sue moments, but I didn't feel like her character as a whole is a Mary Sue. I just felt like anyway, we don't want to get too much, but anyway, but I felt like that Jayla was, I don't know how anyone would claim that she's a Mary Sue. Like, things are hard for her. She doesn't understand how to do anything. Not how to do anything, but not anything, but she doesn't understand as far as fixing the ship and things and getting it flying. She doesn't understand that part.
She does bring a really powerful contribution. The cloaking technology that she has, right? So
that's true.
That's kind of cool. She has a superpower of her own that she contributes. If you want to go with the Marvel comparison, she has her own powers.
Yeah, she's like Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, again,
Okay.
that's another example of the same trope of the the capable person, a female character who's got their own thing going, but at the same time, you worry about them a little bit. You don't want them to get hurt. You want to see everything turn out okay for them, and they're a little bit vulnerable. Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah. Well, and she really did care about people, and I mean, I don't know. I just love that scene where she says, I'm not going back there. Don't go back there.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is worth, that was such a good scene, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the next group is Kirk and Chekhov. James T. as she calls her.
Yeah.
What did you think of them?
That was kind of fun to see them together. I like that we got a little bit more of Chekhov.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
sad.
sort of wistful, with the passing of Anton Yelchin, and I hope they recast him. I don't want to see the character just killed off, because I think he needs to live on. I think they need to recast him. I hope they do. Yeah, but no, their stuff is fun. You've got this. I liked the double deception. That was a very Kirk move. With that whole what's that character's name? Who they were with, who was deceiving them?
Oh, Kalara, I think.
Kalara, right? Yeah. So they make her think that
Kalara, yeah.
They're leading her to the object, to the MacGuffin, and and whoops, we're not. We just wanted to see if that's what you were up to. Yeah. So. But that was cool. That was a very Kirk kind of move, and I like how Chekhov was kind of impressed with that.
Yeah, I think so too. That was really good, and I don't know. There's just a lot of heart with Kirk, I think, in this role.
Yeah.
Just worrying about the rest of the crew, worrying about what was going to happen to Yorktown. All that was really good. Okay, so the last group is Uhura, Sulu, and the others that are all taken prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the most intense pairing because they're the ones that had to see the life force taking thing.
Yeah.
It was definitely emotional for Uhura, and they didn't get that much time. But what did you think of them?
I was sort of stirred by that alien crew member who had the kind of the strange tendrils on her head that closed like hands. And her death was like that hit home, even though she was it's sort of a Star Trek a Star Trek meme that she's the red shirt in this episode, right?
Right.
The person we've never met who's come along on the landing party, and she's not going to survive the episode. But it's not. They didn't play that they used that, but didn't play it for comedy. They used it in a way that,
yeah, that was intense. I mean, what was that? I was a little confused on that. Is the artifact is used for the thing that operates the ship that gets them to, or I was a little confused about that.
It was an ancient bioweapon that just turns people into little smears of ink that disappear.
Oh, okay, so it's a weapon. He wanted to use that weapon on Yorktown?
Yes, he was. That's what he wanted to distribute the bioweapon into the ventilation system of the whole. Of the whole station, right, and thereby wiping out everybody in it.
And how? So was the artifact? How was the artifact made? Who made the artifact? You remember?
An ancient culture.
It had this bioweapon.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And yeah, it's part of the fun of Star Trek is that we see that a lot in Next Gen. We see ancient cultures and technologies that are actually more advanced than what we see with our heroes, or that are, terrifying for some reason. Which that reminds me, I love the hook in this picture. I love the surprise there at the beginning of what you think you're seeing, right? The sort of optical illusion they play with those guys, and how Kirk's presenting that to them. And it turns out they were pretty right to be suspicious of it.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it's the kind of zany thing that sometimes happened to Captain Kirk. It kind of smacked of that scene in The Trouble with Tribbles from the original series where he opens a ventilation shaft and all these tribbles keep piling down on him and he's buried in tribbles, right? Sometimes wacky crap like that happened to Captain Kirk, so it rang true. I like that bit.
So did you like the motorcycle with the reflections, with that whole sequence?
Yeah.
Them saving him. Do you think that was fun?
Yeah, I did. I know that a lot of fans rolled their eyes when they saw that in the trailer, teased in the trailer a little bit.
Right.
Because it was like, oh, more Kirk on the motorcycle, more of the jocks making fun of us. Not a bit of it. No. I think they worked with what the movies had already established about the character and what he liked and what he was into.
Yeah.
And again, that felt like, oh, this is the new cast taking the helm of Star Trek for themselves and saying, this is ours now.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do this on our own terms now. It kind of had that feeling about it, and it was cool, really cool scene. It was fun to watch.
I had fun with it. I thought it was enjoyable. Like I wasn't 100% sure which one actually was Kirk. It kept kind of guessing, and I thought it built momentum really well till the reach out the moment, and that moment where Krall says they're going to leave you behind, and you think, oh no, are they going to, even by accident, kind of.
Right.
So I thought it worked. I did. I liked it. Okay, so when they take down the swarm with the music, is that too silly?
It is a little. It is a little schmaltzy, tempered by the fact that it's a Beastie Boys song and not "We Are the World," right? Or "It's a Small World." I'll grant that it's a little schmaltzy, but I think. To quote a Marvel movie, I think what we're going through this year, the whole world, we could use a little schmaltz.
Yeah.
And we could use a little old-fashioned right now.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, because wouldn't the music basically kind of kill them as well? Like at that kind of frequency, wouldn't it?
Well, no, because kill them who? Who are you referring to?
The crew. Like, I mean, wouldn't they be affected by it as well?
On the Franklin?
Yeah, on the Franklin.
No, because it's not. There's nothing in the frequency itself that is like deadly. It's
because it has to be so loud, though, right?
It's not actually about the. It's look. This is all just made up science, mumbo jumbo. But working within the made up mumbo jumbo, right, and the sort of the rules they established for it, what they were trying to do was break up the swarm's ability to coordinate. Right? So that's what they were stopping, really. And so without their ability to coordinate, they're just running into each other.
Right. Okay. So it's just a radio signal.
It's just so they're basically just jamming them so that they can't coordinate with each other. So it's not, the Franklin wouldn't cause the Franklin to suffer at all. They're not part of the swarm. They're not trying to coordinate with anybody.
It wouldn't have been so loud then. It just would be a frequency.
Oh yeah, no. It's just another of many frequencies and energy vibrations in space.
Okay. So what did you think of Krall and the final kind of showdown between Krall and Kirk? And we know that Krall's played by Idris Elba, who's a really great actor. I don't know, his whole like not believing in peace kind of thing. It's sort of in some ways it's sort of like Chang a little bit, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I thought of General Chang. Yeah. That he's that's his motivation, is that he's a warrior and really knows nothing else. Mm-hmm. And he's a man out of time, right? He doesn't really belong. He's a man out of time in the movie, and he was also a man out of time when he was a Starfleet captain. He really did not belong in Starfleet. He wasn't. Well, and I think probably the Federation was trying to figure out itself what it was, and he sort of got left behind. right? So he
Right.
reached a moment that Chang and Kirk reached in Star Trek Six. You know, do we adapt and grow, or do we stick to our old ways and perish? Right? Kirk adapts and
Mhm.
grows. Chang sticks to his old ways and dies, and is discarded. Right? He's a figment of history.
Mhm.
And same with Kroll. He has to change or die, and he refuses to change. Right? I did like that he was kind of the last of the Makos. That tie to Enterprise, the series Enterprise, was really a lot of fun for me. Um, and I thought that was a cool tie into the one of the series, but also it just made sense. It worked for the character.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a great villain, but he wasn't. He was fine. I guess I don't really mind boring villains. Like, I don't really care. It's a superhero movie. It's a space adventure. If it's, like, I don't need, um, I don't know. I don't need Henry V, kind of a thing. Like, I
Right.
don't need like this incredible, like, whatever, written characters and story and everything. Like, I don't need Iago and Othello. Like, I
Yeah,
don't need
exactly.
some like incredible villain. And so I don't know, because people always complain about that with the Marvel characters, the Marvel movies, and I just almost never care. But
Right.
other
Yeah.
people care.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Okay, so I only have two more questions. My next question is any production design, special effects, or cinematography that stand out to you? I
I
know it's
like
one viewing; it's hard, but
yeah, the like I think I mentioned before, the warp drive shot, where you see
oh
the
yeah.
cutting through warp. That is, oh, it's gorgeous. Um, Another thing I'll mention is I really liked the planet. It something about the way they did the planet they landed on. It felt like the original series. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was all the rock everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it really felt like the original series. They often when they filmed TOS, they often did it out at Vasquez Rocks, which is this rock formation in the Los Angeles area that's really distinctive. It sort of juts out in this very pointy, dramatic way, um, and like you'd know if you saw it, you'd go, "Oh, that I saw that in this or that." It's used a lot for Hollywood and stuff, and that wasn't used here, but um, it had the same impact. What they did with the landscape and the look of everything. Um, the
Yeah. It
I
did. It
liked.
did.
Sorry,
I
go
liked
ahead.
it. No, it did. It felt. It did feel like kind of like an Earth. Like it felt like a real place. Like it didn't feel. Aside from that one moment where Scotty picks up a rock, that rock looks so fake. But but other than that, I thought it looked really good.
Yeah, yeah, and the space station Yorktown. Oh, mind blowing.
Yeah, that's what I was
You know,
gonna say.
I'm used to the Deep Space Nine, which compared to this feels claustrophobic. Um,
Yeah.
it's a glorified spaceship, but this is a space station. I mean, this is for real, and it's a lovely stand-in for Earth. It works in that way, um, and I love how I stumbled on I think a month ago. I stumbled on one of these YouTube videos where fans like pick apart a trailer, and it was the first trailer, and they were just rearranging ignorance. I mean, it was just like, oh, so obviously we're on Earth again, um, and I even by then I didn't know what it was, but I'm like, no, it's not Earth. Trust me, guys, it's not. Um,
I mean, if I was gonna fault Yorktown a little bit, it is a little bit similar to the world in Guardians of the Galaxy.
oh
A
yeah.
little bit, but I don't really care.
Well, the
Bother
people
me.
dressed in the people with interesting colored skin. The thing though is that
Yeah.
guess what? Star Trek did it first. It did. The Green Woman was in the first pilot. Okay, so I don't even want to hear it. Um,
Yeah. I don't care about that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess repetition doesn't bother me the way maybe it does other people as much.
yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't. Um, Okay, yeah, I had pretty much all those same things I really liked. There were a few weak moments, like there was when Kirk was on the motorcycle, zooming up to the crawl station. There were some moments that looked really fake on there, but like, I don't really care. It didn't affect my enjoyment of the film.
I didn't notice anything where there was nothing that took me out of it, and that's really the key. Nothing made me go, what? What is that? Like yeah, and it all fit. So it worked for me as far as that goes. One other special effects thing I'll point out, I really did like the way they revealed the new Enterprise. That it wasn't.
Oh, you like that?
It wasn't freshly minted and ready for them to get in and go, like in Star Trek 4. And the in-universe explanation for that, by the way, in Star Trek 4, where they show up and the Enterprise A is ready to go, is that it was a ship that had originally been christened, I think, the Yorktown or something like that, and they just changed the registry to give Captain Kirk a welcome home present. Whereas this one, they're self-consciously building a new Enterprise, right? But I like that we see it built in high speed. That was.
I wondered what you'd think of that.
What's that?
Like it. I wondered what you would think of that if you'd like it.
Yeah, that was great. I thought that was cool, and I bought it. Like they were looking up not at a finished ship, but at one in progress, and that worked for me.
Yeah, they don't. It's not like it's not like sort of cars where they have like your 2015 will look really different from your 2014 sometimes. Yeah, they look very similar. I'm sure there's upgrades, but it's kind of funny. They know what works and they go with it.
Well, sure. Yeah, the thing is, like it's never going to vary that much.
Yeah.
The Enterprise is always going to be the Enterprise, especially with the original characters involved. Yeah, it's always going to look pretty much like that.
I did also like the production design on the Franklin. I thought that looked old, and just the way that like the computer manifolds, whatever they call them, the computer monitors and computers, just everything. I thought it looked good it looked like the same stuff that's on the Enterprise but older, so it's varied enough.
I would have been happier. I could have been happier with that. Like I would have appreciated it if it looked more like they just took the set of. I would have liked it if they just taken the old set from the Enterprise series, and put them right in it. That would have been beautiful fan service to me. Of course, it is supposed to be a little ahead. Like it's supposed to be more advanced than the ship in that show. So I guess that works. But no, that was cool.
I thought it was consistent and it looked like all part of the same kind of world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. So, okay, so last question is, what did you think of the music? And I'll say I'm talking about the score by Michael Giacchino. I thought it was excellent. I thought he did such a good job. It was so key in things like the swarm of really like whoa, moving you, like really getting invested, getting excited, and things like building up to the momentum of the reaching the arm out thing. Like I thought it was very good score.
And that he did a good job developing themes that had been established before, and twisting them in new and fresh ways, changing the key here and there. I've noticed that as I've kind of listened to it off and on Spotify, that they do some. He does some interesting tweaking with it.
I'll have to listen to that because I really was impressed by it.
Yeah, and I love the familiar themes are intact. I like that we were still finishing with the original Star Trek theme. It built.
It built momentum really well without telling you how to feel. I don't think without being too overbearing. I didn't feel like it was.
Yeah, I think that again, it's sort of like the special effects of it. It didn't draw too much attention to itself, so it did its job.
Yeah. So that was my last question. Did you have anything else you want to talk about?
Whew. Boy, let's see.
I know it's hard when you only seen it once.
Oh yeah, the fight with Kroll at the end with Kirk, that was fun. Like I didn't really get a chance to address what I wanted to say there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I love a good Kirk fist fight, and this was one of those, and I love that they sort of made it fresh by putting it in this odd gravity environment, right, where you're not
It's
really
true.
sure. Though actually, thinking about that scene and also the swarm, oh my gosh, does this movie owe a lot to Ender's Game? Like, it owes a ton to Ender's Game. There are a lot of ingredients from that. Have you seen that picture?
I haven't. I've read the book, but I haven't seen the
yeah,
movie.
I recommend it. It's a strong movie. It's a strong adaptation of that book. But you'll go, oh, I see what he's talking about if you watch that. Asa Butterfield is amazing in it. He does a really good job in that. But yeah, I recommend it.
Cool. I definitely will, because it's one I wanted to check out, but I just missed for some reason.
Yeah, so
That's
your
interesting.
homework is Ender's Game and The Cage.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna start watching the series. I was gonna do it. I was gonna do it this weekend, and then things got in the way. But now that maybe we'll take like a little bit of a break before doing Next Generation.
Yeah.
And then maybe I'll have time to kind of watch. I'm not gonna watch every episode. Somebody told me to go on IMDb and see which ones are rated the most highly, and then watch those.
Right. There are a lot of great fan lists out there. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, just so I don't want to waste my time. That's what I kind of did with Once Upon a Time too. Skip.
Let's talk about that afterwards. About that show.
Okay. All right. So that was it. I think it was really satisfying, entertaining, in a summer that has been so weak. Yeah. I think this is the best live action blockbuster-y kind of movie since Captain America: Civil War. I think that those two are really the only two good movies this year in that kind of.
I'm sort of laughing at
genre.
My December 2015 self, who was going, "Oh my gosh, this year in movies is going to be so amazing."
You're like, oh. Yeah, it's been rough, and so this was a nice, pleasant surprise. To come out of it and be really happy. And okay, well, where can people find you?
My website is tgunwriter.com. My Twitter feed is Elmano Robato.
Cool. And I'll have that in the description section. And so you can find me at Smiling LDS Girl on all social media. And this was really fun. And we will let you know when we're going to do some of the other podcasts that we've been talking about with Next Generation and Galaxy Quest. Will be coming, and that will be really fun. But this was kind of the end. This is the end of Kirk and Spock.
Yeah, the original characters, but pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Very iconic. So, okay, well, great, and thanks again. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And we will. Here we go.